All right. Welcome, everyone, to the first Friday Entrepreneurship Call with K-State Research and Extension. The purpose of this call is to increase the local community's knowledge about the experts, the education, and the economic resources that are available to help small businesses and the communities that love them. As always, the call is being recorded, and you will get a link to the website after it's been posted, and you'll get a copy of Jeff's presentation deck. At the end of the call, if I didn't make you one of the co-hosts, you will get a survey, and I'm going to teach to the test as we start. So at the end of this call, be thinking about these questions as you're listening. Did you learn something today that you can use immediately? Number 2, how many people will you forward this information to? And number 3, open-ended question about what did you learn today that is most helpful to you? And I'll share all of that information with Jeff, and we'll learn from it and figure out how to make it most helpful to you. So with that, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jeff Carroll. I've heard about Jeff at the Trail Duologues last year, and we were talking before most of you joined that Jeff and I confirmed this call in late November of 2022. So he's been thinking about it for a while and maybe dreading it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But Jeff, thank you for being with us and telling us how business owners can help create trail towns.
Well, thank you, Nancy, and thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to everybody today. So what I'm going to talk about today is how trails can transform communities. And in doing that, I'm just going to really tell the story of how we started Ottawa Bike and Trail and sort of our progression in the last 5 years. First, about us, Ottawa Bike and Trail is an independent bike shop in Ottawa, Kansas, at the intersection of the Flint Hills Trail and the Prairie Spirit Trail. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what made us decide to start this shop there and sort of our experience in the last 5 years. In fact, we just celebrated our 5th year anniversary yesterday, October 5th. And so we're, going strong, and we've seen a lot of change and transformation in the last 5 years. And really, as you'll learn as we go through our story, we started in Ottawa at the right time, and we've seen an enormous amount of change in that 5 years. So I want to take you through that and help you kind of hopefully get some ideas on how you might be able to apply some of the things we've learned in your own communities. And but before I do that, I want to make sure I lay this out in the beginning. So we started in five years ago, and there was a lot of things already being done and in place that we really benefited from. And I'll talk you through a little bit of that, but we are definitely the beneficiaries of a lot of hard work that went into creating the trails in Kansas, a lot of the community members moving forward with and really supporting the trails in Ottawa that really led to us even being able to put our shop there. So I want to walk you through all of that. And but I just want, we're going to talk a lot about our experience, but I want to make sure you understand everything that went into that even before we got to Ottawa. And before I do that, it's asking me to I've got something on my screen about the recording, but I'll just ignore that. I can't get it off. So this is first, I'll tell you a little bit about my previous experience. So I spent 30 years in financial services, and my last few years there, I was a product manager. So I spent all of my time looking at profitability analysis, putting charts together like this SWOT analysis chart, and all of those kinds of things. So I had a lot of business experience going into opening a small business, and was sitting in an office focused on a lot of these kinds of things. And I promise this is the only business slide I have in this entire presentation, but I think it's helpful to kind of think about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats when we're looking at how to transform anything. And that's one of the things that sort of I learned in my years of business before starting a small business. So that was really helpful. But this is me the day after I left that job and got to focus on something that I truly am passionate about, which is cycling. And I decided to make that transition. I showed up in Ottawa, Kansas, the day after I left my job, my career job, and started talking to the folks there about trails and about any opportunities that might exist in Ottawa for putting a bike shop in. So that's sort of how I started. And I do want to apologize for this is a K-State presentation. I want to apologize for the jersey there. I will assure you that I also have a K-State jersey. My wife went to K-State. My daughter just happened to go to TCU, so we wear a lot of purple in our house. So that's why I have that jersey on. Let me get to the next slide. So when I came to Ottawa, the first thing I did was I met with the city manager, I met with the Chamber of Commerce, and I also met with other leaders in town. And that was all in the same day. And the enthusiasm that they had for the opportunity in Ottawa, to leverage what we had there, the trails, the Flint Hills Trail and the Prairie Spirit Trail, it was very encouraging. And I think everyone there knew that we had an opportunity, but they really didn't have a lot of expertise in terms of engaging with the cycling community and figuring out a way to leverage the infrastructure that we had. So frankly, I didn't have a lot of experience in that either, but I understood, and had some ideas just from my experience as a cyclist that we could leverage that opportunity. So the same day that I came to Ottawa, we saw this building. Didn't have the sign up there at that time, but it was an empty building that one of the leaders in town, who happens to be my landlord now, had actually renovated this building with the idea that it would make a perfect bike shop. So we met with him. We had a lease in the same day and started launched this bike shop. This is what it looks like now. So we've transformed the space considerably, and we've made a nice little bike shop in Ottawa. So when I looked at the opportunity and sort of made the leap into the small business world, one of the main drivers was just the trails themselves. So if you're not familiar with Ottawa, we're right at the intersection of the Flint Hills Trail and the Prairie Spirit Trail. The Flint Hills Trail is about 92 miles, and it runs from Osawatomie to Council Grove. And the Prairie Spirit Trail runs north and south from Ottawa down to Iola. And then there's another trail called the Southwind Trail that goes on to Humboldt. So we have 155 miles of trail right out our back door. So that was, one of the main drivers for me. I had ridden some of those trails. At the time, the Prairie Spirit Trail was a state park, but the Flint Hills Trail was not. It actually became a state park in 2018. So we started our shop the very year that the Flint Hills Trail became a state park. And that, again, was one of those things that helped us make a decision to do what we did. The other major driver was a project called Legacy Square, which was a project that was underway before we moved to town. And that project was building a pavilion right at the intersection of both of the trails, the Prairie Spirit Trail and the Flint Hills Trail, right in Ottawa. So when we moved there, this area was just a dirt parking lot, but there was plans that we actually got to see that showed and just kind of reinforced that the city was really behind this whole idea. And so that was one of the things that we looked forward to. And eventually that got built, and it's there now. And people come and park in that pavilion to ride the trails. And we see that parking lot being utilized every single week and every day, really. And on the weekends, especially, we see cars from all over the state and all over the surrounding states parked in that parking lot. The other thing that really was important for us was the growing cycling community in Kansas. Probably, if you're not familiar with a race in Emporia, Kansas, called the Unbound Gravel Race, which used to be called the Dirty Kansas, that race brings thousands of cyclists to Kansas every single year. And it's really the largest cycling event in the country. I kind of equate it to the Kentucky Derby of cycling or the Indianapolis 500. But people from all over the world come to ride this race, and I had some experience with it and understood the opportunity there. People are coming to Kansas because of the incredible gravel roads that we have, and because of the beautiful scenery, and it's just gained a enormous reputation in the cycling world. I'm surprised a lot that Kansans don't really understand this, and but that was a major driver. There was a big drive. In fact, in the cycling community, gravel cycling is the fastest growing, and in fact, number two, really only to mountain biking. So it's just a big driver for everything that's happening in the cycling world, and we wanted to be part of that. In Ottawa, we have a lot of gravel roads, and we leverage that a lot. We ride on those gravel roads, but also we sort of had a different view also, because we knew, gravel cycling, gravel racing isn't for everybody, but we thought if a competitive race like this could draw so many people and capture so many people's imaginations, imagine what we could do with these trails that we have, where anyone can jump on a trail, anyone can participate there. So we thought, we had even a leg up there with the trails, and we could, leverage that and bring people to Ottawa. The other interesting bit of information, this might be something you might be interested in looking at, is, and this didn't exist when we started, but exists now. Strava, which is a cycling app, records all of their rides and makes that data available through their website. So they have this heat map, and we can see where people are riding their bikes. And of course, all of the big cities, you see a lot of traffic, but you also see these big lines, if you can see it here, where the Flint Hills Trail and the Prairie Spirit Trail are. And so we can see the amount of traffic that's coming in there. And also there's quite a bit of traffic around Ottawa where we are. So that's just, I wanted to throw that out there because that might be of interest to you if you want to understand how cycling is happening in your community. This is available. It used to be, there was really no great way to really track this information. People would put down markers that you ride over, and they try to count riders that way. But this kind of changes everything. This data is available, and you can really see what the impact is of the cycling in your community.
Jeff?
Yes.
Jeff, what is the name of that source?
It's called Strava.
Straba.
Straba, yeah.
Okay.
And I attached some resources at the back of this presentation. Nancy, I'll update that, a link to that, so that people can find it easily.
That's amazing. Thank you.
It's an incredible tool, yeah. And we, it's interesting to see all the roads that we've started. I wish we had this data before we started, because with the community we've built in Ottawa and all the roads that we ride now, it'd be interesting to see the progression over time, but I don't think there's a way to do that. With my background and looking at starting a small business, sort of in the back of my mind were all of the threats and concerns. And if you know anything about small business retail, and the bike business is no different, there's enormous challenges in terms of just competition with online, competition with within just retail, and with the big box stores and everything else. And bike shops are closing every day. You see it all the time, and it's a tough business to be in. So we understood that, and we kind of assumed the risk going in, but we also thought that if we did things different and we focused more on the community and building a business to draw people to our location, that we would stand a chance to make it. And we've made it 5 years, so far that's worked out pretty well. But we started with our mission statement, and I'm going to have to look at my slides here because I can't see there's a big window over my slide here. So we started with the mission, which was to encourage more people to get on bikes. And also that we wanted to build an inclusive community of cyclists in Ottawa. And we knew that if we did that would be our key to success, because we needed to be able to draw people in, build a community that didn't really exist in Ottawa, and also to bring people to Ottawa. So but we had a couple of core beliefs, and this kind of came from my background in cycling and my love of cycling. we believe that bicycles can change the world. In terms of where we are in the world, it's really clear in my mind, and all of my friends, I think, share this belief that getting people on bicycles can do a lot to improve our world in terms of pollution, in terms of getting people healthy, and all of those things. So we're passionate about that. I also believe that trails can transform communities, and that's what I'm going to talk about in the rest of the presentation. And part of that was my travels. I've been to a lot of places in the world, and I've seen sort of when you get a large community of people riding bikes, how that can transform a community. I've traveled a lot to what I would consider trail towns or bike towns in the US. And it's amazing to me when I go into a town and I see the impact that can have. And so that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit. The other thing that you hear is that small towns are dying. Of course, that's true in a lot of places. But what we've seen in a lot of towns that really work on transforming their community, and sometimes with the help of trails, that it can really transform a small town and really change the way that town is viewed and conceived. And so I think, obviously that's not the only factor, but I think it can play a big factor. And that's really why we do what we do. And that's really what I want to talk about. But also we thought building a community, first, it all starts with building a community of cyclists. You have to have people that share your passion and vision and that will participate. And, we thought in building the business that if we did that, the business side would take care of itself. One of the other factors for moving to Ottawa is there was no bike shop within 30 miles. And that's a challenge in a lot of places. It's hard to build a community of cyclists if everybody has flat tires and they can't get their bikes rolling. It's just hard to gain any traction there. So we immediately felt like we could step in and make a difference there. I will say that a lot of conversations in the early days from people was, there's not many cyclists in Ottawa. There's a handful of people we see riding around, but there's not a lot of people. How are you going to make a business when you don't have any cyclists? And so we thought, well, we'll hopefully be able to change that. The other thing, we sort of, a lot of bike shops, focus just on selling bikes, and that makes sense, and servicing bikes. But we thought we needed to do a few more things to leverage and really get people to come to town. So we also offer bike rentals. We offer trail transportation. So if somebody wants to come to town, and we can take them out on the trail and let them ride back. We do that quite a bit. We have a van that can take 10 people. So that's a service we offer. We also provide a lot of trail information. We get calls every single day of people wanting to come to town, and they really are trying to figure out what's the best way to visit the trails, and we provide that information. And then we really have over the years focused on events. We believe that if we can bring people to town and they see what a great town we have, they see the connection that we have with the trails, and it really helps us grow that community beyond just Ottawa. And ultimately it was really about creating a unique experience, not just for our shop, but also helping people see the unique place that was Ottawa and connecting to a lot of the other great things that we have to offer. So when people come to town, we want them, first of all, to think about coming to town and think of Ottawa as a destination. And when they get here, I think we offer them a lot of things that they didn't expect, and some surprises, hopefully, that will get them to come back. So that's sort of our strategy. And we set up the business, and we were focused on that and everything we did. The other thing that we did, which turned out to be a really sort of the turning point for me, even before we had announced that we were opening a shop or doing anything, we got on Facebook and we created a Facebook group and invited people to come down for just a ride in Ottawa on the Flint Hills Trail. And surprisingly, we got a huge response. A lot of people were curious. They were hearing about the trails, and so they joined us for this event. And we ended up getting like 30 people from all over Kansas to come to Ottawa and ride with us that day. So as we were launching out about 10 miles in, we thought, you know what, we might be onto something here. So this is a picture of our first ride we left from the depot in Ottawa and rode the Flint Hills Trail, and it was a great experience. And a lot of these people in this picture are still riding with us every week, and it was just turned out to be a great way to do it. So sometimes it's just try it, and things will come, and that's really what happened with this ride. And now, back to creating a unique experience. We've done a lot of things at our shop. We bring people in all the time that are traveling across the state or traveling across the country, and they see this big trail and they end up stopping at our shop. So we really try to treat those people very special. If they need a bike repair or something like that, we do whatever we can to help them. The other thing that we've tried to do is create some unique things at our shop. On the picture on the right is of a mural from a great local Kansas artist. He put this mural together for us, and so people, when they come, the mural's kind of getting famous, and people come to town and they always want to take a picture in front of the mural. So just small things like that make it a unique experience, I think you have to focus on. The other thing that, I don't know that we really had this insight when we started this shop, but over time, I've really started to understand that, what, Kansas is a trail state. I mean, many of the towns in the state exist because of the trails that came through the state. Initially it was the Santa Fe Trail, the Oregon Trail, all the trails that came through, and towns started to crop up along those trails. Eventually, it became the railroads towns started to crop up. Ottawa is an example of that. We wouldn't be here without the railroad, really. And the history of all of that can really play a part today, even when you're building trails. And hopefully we can capture some of the excitement that people must have felt as they rode through on these trails and came across towns and experienced Kansas that way. I think there's an opportunity in trails to do that today. And that's what I hope we can start to see towns doing. The other thing, if you look around at other, are there other trail towns out there? And certainly there's some great examples. People probably get sick of me talking about Northwest Arkansas and Bentonville. If you think of Bentonville as the home of Walmart, I think the new reputation is it's the mountain bike trail capital of the world. And it's not just Bentonville, but it's the entire area. So I would encourage you, if you want to see how what was a small town, how it transformed due to trails and trail building, definitely make a trip down to Bentonville. At one point, they were building about 2 miles of trail a day, and it's just enormous what they've done down there. So actually, I think it might have been a month, but they're building a lot of trail down there. And there's a lot of examples of unique things that they've done to draw people in. So now I want to transition to kind of what's the meat and potatoes of what makes a trail town, right? What do you need to have to really leverage a trail? And, we're lucky. We have an enormous trail system. I know there are trails all over the state of Kansas that are shorter trails, 5-mile trails, 2-mile trails, even half-mile trails. And a lot of those things apply. First of all, you have to have the physical infrastructure. You have to have good trails. They have to be maintained, and that's a big challenge. You have to have signage. You have to have bike parking. So don't overlook that. When people come in on a trail, you have to have a place for them to park. Bike lanes, I'll talk a little bit about that, but connecting the trail to other parts of the community through bike lanes is really a great thing to do. Shelters, water, accessibility features, parking, lodging is important, and then connections to local businesses. So all those things are sort of the meat and potatoes. You have to have that stuff. Obviously, every community is a little bit different, but fortunately for us, a lot of that was in place when we got there. Thanks to Rails Trails Conservancy, the state of Kansas, and Ottawa, a lot of that stuff was there. But probably the more challenging part and the more important part is how do you then build an identity around that? All of those things are great. You'll get people to come, but you really have to focus on what's going to really drive people and bring people to town. And that's how you build an identity around your trail and around your community that will draw people in. So let me go over to that. And that involves things like the policies, of who can use the trails, how you can use the trails. One of the things that we had in Ottawa, or actually on the Prairie Spirit Trail, was a a toll to ride on the trails, which is a very small amount of money. It probably cost more to collect than it was worth. And those kinds of policies really can drive people away. So you've got to look at those things and see how you can improve that to make everything more accessible. And then the business amenities are important, and it might be surprising when for us, where we have a long distance trail, a lot of people are coming into town planning to spend the night, and it's things that you wouldn't think of, like a laundromat or a of course a bike shop, and Airbnbs and lodging, and all of those things are very important. But even some of the other businesses that you wouldn't think of are also important to think about how to connect those to your trails. And then, of course, the community engagement. When someone comes in on a trail or through your town, how do they engage with the community? And it's surprising, when you see a town that makes that possible. It's fantastic, but it's surprising how in many ways you ride through town and you have no idea what's available, where to find things, how to get around. Of course, with our phones, we can do that a lot, but it's almost information overload. So if there's a good way to connect people to what's going on in your town, that's also very important. We rely also heavily on events, active events, getting people out on the trails, letting them see the trails, and those kinds of things. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. And then, of course, education and awareness and marketing. One of the resources that I think is one of the best resources about how things that you could think about in your community to make it more bicycle friendly and trail friendly and even pedestrian friendly is the League of American Cyclists. They have a program where they rank cities and businesses as bicycle friendly or not. And basically you have to apply for it. There's a whole criteria that you have to go through to get named a bicycle friendly community. And the ranking itself doesn't mean that much, but the criteria that they set out is extremely helpful to help you understand and look at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in your community, and get ideas on how you can change it. And they focus on they call it the 5 E's: equity and accessibility, engineering, encouragement, evaluation, and planning. And those criteria are how they rank. And you can see that there are our state is 30th out of 50, which isn't great. Hopefully over time we'll see more communities participate in this and we'll get more bike friendly. But there's an opportunity there for sure. There are 5 communities, so there's definitely an opportunity there. I think there's a lot more bicycle friendly communities than 5 in the state of Kansas. So that's something that we could look at. And there's only 10 businesses. We happen to be one of those businesses. We went through that process early on, and again, it's extremely helpful. And I think if I will attach the link at the back of the presentation, you can see it there on the slide. But that's a great resource to look at how you can just kind of meet those meat and potato criteria of building a bicycle friendly and a trail friendly town. The other thing, I think the first thing you have to do is look at how do you remove barriers. And this picture, I think is kind of humorous. This is a very small town. I won't name the town. Some of you might recognize it. But when you ride your bike into town, you see a sign that says no bikes, just right in the main business area of town. And I'm sure that was put up long ago. But that's, I think, sends the wrong message. I'm sure what they were trying to do is say no bikes on the sidewalks, or something like that. But it's just humorous that that's the first thing you see when you come into town. I guess, well, I'll show you the next slide. So this is actually Ottawa, and we actually have a sign similar to that as you come into our downtown. And I'd love to see that removed at some point. But I think a better way to approach this would be to say, please get off and walk your bike, or walk your bike, or something like that. That's a little more encouraging than but it's those small, subtle messages that can turn people away, and it just sort of creates an environment where you think that cycling is not important. I know that where everyone's trying to encourage people to get outside and get on their bikes, so we just need to remove those kinds of barriers if we can. And then I think the biggest important thing is, how do you build a community? So, let's say you're a small town and you have a trail project in your town. To me, the first thing you should focus on is build a community around that trail, or build a community that's focused on and is enthusiastic about what you're doing. And it can be a bike community. This is a picture that we took at the opening of the Flint Hills Trail in Osawatomie. We did a bike ride, and we drew probably 125 people to this. And that's an extended community that we've built in Ottawa around cyclists. But I know there are other trail related communities that aren't even cycling based. So there's a group near Garnett, Kansas called Friends of the Prairie Spirit Trail. And they've sort of created a social community that is based around the trail, but they do a lot of other things. Of course, they help maintain the trails, and they're all very enthusiastic about the trail, but it's also, they have social gatherings and they get together as a community just because the trail was sort of something that they could latch onto. Also, you can look at other types of communities like bird watching communities, or walkers, or even running communities. We have a lot of endurance running events on our trails. So whatever that is for your community, how you can build a group of enthusiastic people and grow that group, and over time, I think that's a key to success, especially for us. We do group rides every single week, twice a week. Thursday nights we have a ride where we partner with a local brewery, Not Lost Brewing Company, and we do a ride that meets at their location after the ride. So every single week, and we do this year round. It's that consistency, even when it's very cold, just having that consistent event really helps maintain that community. It's, we have people that come and go, but people know it's always there. We also do a Saturday morning community ride where we have waffles and coffee before the ride, and then we ride on the trails or on the gravel roads around Ottawa every Saturday morning as well. So those are sort of our key events. It's been enormously helpful for us to do that, and we see, we've made a lot of friends that way, and we have a great community. Everyone knows everyone, and it's just kind of that bedrock foundation for what we're trying to do. It's also, obviously the next thing you think about is events. What can we do event-wise to promote our community and our trails? And that's a big focus for us. We started with an event we call Moonrise Bike Ride, which is a music festival and a food festival. It's all catered, and a bike packing event. And so it's a fairly ambitious endeavor every year, and it takes a lot out of us, but we've done it 5 years in a row, and it's grown every single year, and that's helped us extend our community. So we have our local riders and our local people that are fans of our shop, but we now have this broader community of people that come to town every year to ride this event. And so that's, I think, important. And again, any kind of event like that can be helpful in promoting what you're doing. We just happened to come up with this idea, and we've been very successful with it. We also have a race every year now called the Bad Astra, which is a 100-mile bicycle race, and then we have a 50-mile version of that we call the Half Astra, and we just completed that last weekend, and we had a lot of people come to town for that. I think there was almost 200 participants for that. So even though we started out sort of thinking we were going to focus more on the non-competitive side of cycling, we worked with a local bunch of friends of ours, and they organize this race. We sponsor it, but they organize it and they do all of the work. And that's another thing I would say when you look at don't try to do everything yourself. Being able to branch out and let other people sort of share the the enthusiasm and share the focus, and that's been, I think, a big part of what we've tried to do. Probably not enough, but now other folks are getting in on the game and doing other things, even beyond what we're able to do as a small business. So the next thing I want to talk about is building connections. So I've ridden on a lot of trails, and it's in some cases, a lot of these trails will take you just kind of on the outskirts of town or through the side of a town, and you're wondering, well, what's in that town? What can I explore there? What can I see there? And I had ridden some trails in Iowa. There's a trail called the Raccoon Trail, and it's near another trail called the High Trestle Trail. And I would say they've done a masterful job of connecting communities to the trail. You ride through any of these towns and you'll see things like these signs here that you can see in this picture that tell you every single thing that you should, why you should make that turn and go into town and see what's going on. And that was enormously helpful. And they actually, almost every town along the way has that. And so I think having those connections, we actually in Ottawa, we actually, with the county's help, sort of took it even the other direction. And I-35 runs right through Ottawa, and they put this big sign on I-35 directing people to the trail. So that's another way, kind of on the opposite way, to drive people to the trails. But I think, having those, using signage or some other way to give people that connection to your town is into what's going on in your community is extremely important. Of course, again, people have phones and they can look up that information, but if you've tried to do that, it's overwhelming. It's so difficult to find, what's legitimate information, and it's much easier to just take the simple approach of, putting some signs up, I think. So in terms of also connections, we're starting to see a lot of connecting businesses on the trails, and I wanted to point this one out. This is Base Camp Flint Hills, which is a friend of ours started this little camping area right in Allen, Kansas, right connected to the Flint Hills Trail. And I think my friend Darius and his wife Amy that put this together, I think they're even on the call here, but they've done a great job of building their own little community in Allen, Kansas, and connecting the local businesses. They do events there. They've worked with a lot of the local community groups to work on events with them. When we did our Moonrise bike ride event, we camped there and we worked with the local nonprofit to do breakfast. So, it's amazing the number of connections you can make, and how those connections will lead to bigger and better things. And this Base Camp Flint Hills is a great example of that. I'm inspired by what they've done there. On the other end of the trails in the Prairie Spirit Trail near Iola, you may have heard that they have just created a new state park there called the Lehigh Portland Trails. And we're super excited about that. It's connected to the Prairie Spirit Trail. And they have a big sign at the Prairie Spirit Trail that leads you to the Lehigh Portland Trails. So, if you haven't seen that, I would say look into it. It's extremely exciting. And I wonder if that really would have even been possible without all of the work that had been done on the Prairie Spirit Trail and the community that they've built around the trails in Iola that eventually led to a state park going there. So I guess it's the reason I bring this up. It's just another example where these communities start up, they take hold, and great things start to happen. And that's what we're seeing all over Kansas and on the trails. So the next thing I want to talk about is embracing your identity. When we came to Ottawa was really known as for a lot of things, but the big event every year in Ottawa was their car show. So we have a huge car show. People come from all over, and everybody was focused on that as the event in Ottawa. This was bringing people to town, and we wanted to work with that group, but also try to develop another identity for Ottawa, and that's based on the trails. So I guess what I would say is if you're trying to promote a trail or promote your community, look at the history of your community. Look at what makes your community unique, what makes it great, and try to incorporate that. This picture here is an example just of a small town in Iowa that I rode through that had this beautiful sculpture that they put in place. And it's things like that. If you think about maybe how to express the history of your town through artwork or through something on the trails to get people to make that community unique. I guess that's what I'm trying to say there. Another town, if you haven't been to Osawatomie, Kansas, another town that has really changed the identity, or at least enhanced the identity of the town, is Osawatomie, and they're on the easternmost end of the Flint Hills Trail. They have done a masterful job of developing an identity, a trail identity for their town. And they use the term mile zero because they're actually at mile zero of the Flint Hills Trail. They've put this beautiful mural, which captures their historic identity of being a John Brown birthplace, and all of those things they've incorporated into and tied it into their trail system, which has really made it a destination. And so they've, in a very short period of time, when we started 5 years ago, you couldn't even get into Osawatomie on the trail. You had to take a little highway to get into town. And in just that short period of time, they've really transformed it. And they've one of the just small things that they've done is they put these bikes all over town. The little yellow bike in the corner, they have those all over town. So as you drive through town, you may not even know that the trail exists or that it's there, but you'll see these bikes all through town, and it really makes you think about it and sparks your interest. And so looking at, what can you do in your community that's going to make it unique, and it's really going to stand out and draw people's attention, draw their attention, and help them, remember your town or create a memory of your town. So definitely check out Osawatomie. They've done a fantastic job. Other examples of unique things that I've seen on trails when I was in Iowa. One of the things you'll see is every town, like I said before, every town sort of has a unique identity that they've developed. Their trails have been there quite a while, and so it's taken some time, I'm sure, to get there. But you'll see large groups of people riding through these towns in groups, and they make sort of a weekend or a day long event out of it. And it's because they can stop at one town and there's a restaurant, an outside restaurant with serving food or beverages. The next town might have an outdoor ice cream stand, and the next town might they even have small retailers that are set up on the weekends, or food trucks that are there. And so all of those things make it an enjoyable experience to go from town to town. And that's sort of the vision I'd like to see in some of our trails is, more of that, where I can look forward to when I leave a town, I can look forward to what's coming next. When we enter the next town, what am I going to find? And I think that sort of element of discovery, if we can inject that into our trails, I think that'll even help transform a lot of these communities along the way. The other thing is, I think you have to get creative. So, there's a lot of great ideas out there, but there's a lot of ideas that have never been implemented that I'd love to see. And also, one thing I hear quite a bit from towns that are trying to grapple with this: how do we make our trails really? How do we grow them? And a lot of the concerns are around, we don't have a local bike shop, or we don't have a town that's big enough to support a local bike shop. And I think there's a lot of creative solutions to that problem. One is, most of the challenges or most of the repairs or needs that you'll have in a town are just simple things like fixing a flat and getting a bike working. And if you can enlist or engage someone to get that skill and sort of become that local expert to get people's bikes going, I think that's a great opportunity. They don't have to start a big business. They don't have to have it. They just have to have a few skills and a way to communicate that they're available for that service. And that's a great way to sort of solve that problem. And I think, we have a few folks around town that sort of fill that role, retired folks that just have that skill or interest. And there's always someone like that in just about every town that can do those things. And I think if you can engage those people, make them available, you can solve that problem. So that's something to be creative about. There are also a lot of mobile bike shops. This is one area that we're sort of exploring, is how we can provide mobile services to some small towns, maybe as a pop-up type of bike shop where we come in for a weekend and do a lot of bike repairs and then maybe come back in a couple of months and do it again. I know a lot of the towns, a lot of the larger towns have mobile bike shops, and maybe reaching out to them to see if they can fill that need. I think that's one of those things that can be done. The last thing I want to talk about is sharing success. And what I mean by that, I guess one of the things, a little background is, when I started our bike business, one of the things that really drew me in was the willingness of a lot of other bike shops to help us learn what we needed to learn and get on our feet. You think about businesses being competitive, but in the bike business, I think there's a culture of helping each other and sharing information and sharing successes. And that is one of the things I love about the bike business. And I think the same can be true of, trail communities. We have to look at ways to help each other, share information with each other, and help each other be successful. Especially in a situation like we have, where all of us are connected by trails. One improvement in one area of the trail helps everyone. The cliche, rising tide helps all boats. I think that's definitely true when we're talking about trails and cycling and communities. So I think and it's also been one of the most inspiring things. I've talked about a few of the communities in this presentation that have inspired me, but there are many, many more. If you look at things in Humboldt, things that are going on there's some big things going on in Osage City. There's a project to get the Flint Hills Trail extended out to Harrington, and all of these communities are pulling together and doing things to try to make that happen. And it's inspiring. So it's definitely an inspiring time in Kansas. The other thing that inspires me, again, back to Northwest Arkansas, I think they're taking the lead in this area in terms of working as a community to improve the entire region. They have a group, I believe it's a nonprofit group called Oz Trails, and they have really connected all of the small towns in Northwest Arkansas and provided resources and a common marketing of all of their trails. So when you go to Northwest Arkansas, it's common to stay in one place and then travel to all of these other small towns, and they all have a unique offering. They all have unique trails. They all have unique businesses that have been built around the trails. So I think they've done a masterful job of doing that. And I would love to see in Kansas, because we have so many, I don't know the entire stats, but almost every county in Kansas has some sort of a trail project going on. And I would love to see some sort of a centralized resource where we could tie all of these things together, share information, and make improvements. In a small way, we've sort of started that process. We started a Facebook group called Kansas Trail Friendly Business Alliance. So if you're interested in joining that Facebook group, we haven't been as active as I hoped, but it's a way to kind of connect a lot of us, share questions, share information, and those kinds of things. But I'd love to see over time a bigger community grow up around making Kansas a destination trail state, and figure out ways to provide information out to communities to share that information across the state. So that's what I wanted to point out there. The last thing I want to talk about a little bit of what I see coming in the future, because I do think the 5 years that we've been around, we've seen so much change, and I think the next 5 years we're gonna continue to see a lot of that throughout the state. So one of the things, and this is sort of my pet project, one of the things I think we're going to have to address in the future is that people that are interested in trails and even in cycling, the average age is probably over 50, or at least over 40. It's an aging population, and most of those people grew up riding their bikes, and they got started at a very early age, and um, unfortunately, that's not the case. Young people, it's harder to get them engaged, obviously, due to social media and the phones and all the other things that you think about. But there are things that are happening that are changing that. And to me, the most inspiring thing that's happening is a form of trail. It's called a pump track. And this is a picture of a pump track. And it's basically, if you think of a skate park, but for bicycles. And it's a way to create an environment where kids can get out, families can get out and roll around on these really fun trails. And it's really a great way to get them excited about cycling. It's sort of a step into mountain biking. These are, but they're simple little trails. And I think we've seen the growth of these types of tracks all over the country. It hasn't really taken off here in Kansas yet, but if you look around in Missouri, St. Louis area, even there's starting to be a few in Kansas City. These, I think, are the future, and they can be as big or as small as you want to make them. But I think what I would love to see is a few of these along the trail to give younger people something to be really excited about. And this is just a picture of a trail opening where they have hundreds of these kids out riding. And I see other projects like this that are trying to accomplish this. There are cities that put skate parks in, and all of those things are great. But I think this is an even more inclusive way and an easier way to get kids interested and on bikes. So this is an example of one in Rogers, Arkansas, called the Rail Yard, where they've incorporated a lot of the features and a lot of the things that 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 make it unique. So so those concepts can be applied to these types of pump track projects, and sort of it's my dream and my vision would be to see one of those in Ottawa to enhance and make Ottawa an even more great cycling community. So that is, I guess, the one last thing I want to leave you with. We just celebrated our 5-year anniversary. All of these things that we've done, you try to step back and say, has it made an impact? And I think it has. We hear from people all the time what changes, things that we've helped them do with some of the things that we've done, and not just us, but as a community. And I think it's inspiring and I think validation that if you really focus on trying to create a community and use trails to impact people's lives, it can really make it happen. So I think any town can transform using trails, and if they are focused on the right things and they really want to do it. So with that, that's a lot of talking. Hopefully you learned something. I will open it up to questions if you have any. Be happy to help and answer anything.
Okay, so we've been getting some great comments in the chat, and your friend, as you said, your friend Darius has given us good information on Strava, the heat map, and Jeff Bender indicates that you can get Strava both for biking or walking. And Darius points to gravelkansas.com. And Darius, I'm not sure, I don't know whether you're available to open your mic, but his comment is, out of Emporia, they are attempting to build a network of gravel bike routes, a network in Kansas to help drive a destination for cyclists. And they're specifically looking for local communities that have the infrastructure, food, and lodging that can support visitors who want to ride. Is there anything that we should do or could do to help with that? Or are you just saying contact them at Gravel Kansas?
Yeah, and hopefully you can hear me. They've just recently launched their website, and it's Leland Danes is heading it up. He's out of Emporia, and he was one of the promoters of the original Dirty Kanza Unbound. And my understanding, I'm not involved with the organization, but my understanding is what they're trying to do is help make Kansas a destination for gravel cycling. And what they're looking for is towns that have that infrastructure, like Jeff talked about, that would support lodging, food, activities, and things like that for people to come into town. And then they're trying to build a network of routes around those towns for people to come, stay, spend some money in the town, and explore the gravel community. So it might be something, if people are interested, to reach out to them.
Leland, yeah, that's great. Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
one thing I would add to that too, and that's a great point, in that let's say you're in a community that doesn't have a rail trail through it, or trail that would draw people. You all have gravel. Most towns have gravel roads, and those are more valuable every single day. So being able to leverage a group like that with it and put some routes out there can definitely be helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, that picture you showed us of the Emporia event starting out was kind of jaw dropping for most of us.
Yeah.
Are you aware, the question is, did the city of Ottawa obtain grant funding for trails? I assume that they did. Do you happen to know what sources they got used?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on that, but I can assure you, yes, there's been a number of grants that have gone into that. The Rails Trails Conservancy certainly did a lot of that early grant work, and then there's been grants that have come to do, improvements. I know the Sunflower Foundation was a big part of that, but no, I can try to track down that information and try to share it. But
That's all right. I mean, unless you find we do searches here at K-State Research and Extension for people, and we've got quite a few trail sites, I think.
yeah, I know there are a lot of there's a lot of tourism grants that are out there right now through the state of Kansas, and I would definitely be looking into those.
Very good. I think there's somebody on here from the tourism. If you want to unmute and tell us about any of that. I thought I saw somebody from tourism. We got some great comments about what other people are doing in Shawnee, Kansas. They're trying to get a Bentonville type of trail system in the Western Shawnee area. Okay, here, do your trails and events have prohibitions or speed restrictions for motorized bicycles, scooters, or one wheels? Are such things even enforceable?
Yeah, so there are regulations on the types of motorized vehicles that can be used on the trails, and this is I know it's true of the state park trails, and it's really sort of a standard that's being developed on most trails, and that is a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit for motorized bicycles. And there's types of bikes that they have to be pedal assist for the most part. So it's, people traveling under their own power, staying under 20 miles an hour. Whether that's enforceable or not, if you had unlimited resources, which we don't, but I think for the most part, people try to follow that, and it hopefully we won't see a lot of people abusing that.
Yeah. So we're seeing some good sources of funding. Ron Wilson is showing us sports and outdoor source for biking. Of course, KDOT's transportation alternatives is a good source. Holly wants to know, are your trails ADA accessible?
Yeah, I think so. In town, most of our trails are paved, not all of them. But I think the Flint Hills Trail and the Prairie Spirit Trail, the trail surface itself I believe, is ADA accessible. And then some of the trail heads are as well. But there's probably, if Jeff Bender's on the phone, he would probably be able to answer that.
Well, and I will tell you, we're running out of time. We
Okay.
can stay longer if people want to. That's probably a good segue to our Trail Tuesday talks, actually, too. So Elizabeth Berger from Sunflower says that Sunflower and Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks and KDOT are all helped with the actual trail work, as well as city dollars. Legacy Square is entirely on donation and fundraising, great collaborative efforts. And if you want to hear more about how Ottawa did that, they did a trail talk in, I think, April of 2021, maybe. But anyway, if you just look on our trail, if you look on our First Friday event, well, you'll see that. I'm going to stop the share now, and oh, let's see. Okay. Or Jeff, if you want to stop share, that'd be great.
Okay, sure.
So I wanted to let you all know, I alluded to Trail Tuesdays, Trail Talk Tuesdays. It's ironic that we planned this 10 months ago, and then when we started to plan our trail talks, we decided to start them in October. So it's just coincidence that happened. And the first one is October the 10th, this next week. And if you haven't already, we've got about 66 participants registered, but if you haven't already registered, I'm going to put it in the chat where you can register. There we go. We do have more grant workshops coming up. In November, we will be during the daytime. And Wildcat District is hosting us. They're on here. You can register for that as well, and I'll put that in the chat. And Myron just thanked everybody. Myron's going to be one of our speakers on Tuesday. So there's good, whoops, that didn't go where I wanted it to. So our First Friday, our grant workshops will be, well, only thing I'm getting is the same thing over and over. I must not be copying and pasting correctly. All right, grant workshops are still available in November and December. In December, we're going to have an evening workshop for all of you that are working during the day. Lots of good compliments there. Nathan wants to know, is there a trend for more electric bicycles on these long, wide open trails? Jeff, are you seeing that?
Absolutely. The e-bikes are exploding right now. And we've probably sold more e-bikes in the last 2 months than any other bike. So I think they're part of the reason for that is the wide distances that we have, and people are learning that they can just explore a bigger section of the trail. We also rent e-bikes, which that's been pretty popular as well. So definitely you're going to see a lot of that. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Jeff and Nathan. Okay, if you have an event that you would like to promote, please send it to me if you think it's in line with our mission here. And otherwise, we'd love to see you on our Trail Talk Tuesday this week. And our next call will be on November 3rd, the first Friday of November. Over the past year, the Office of Rural Prosperity and the Patterson Family Foundation partnered to create 12 different rural champions projects. And on November 3, 3 different rural champions will share their experiences and best practices that they learned to tackle housing in rural communities. And I think Jeff and others on this call constantly remind us of our thought for the day today. And this is by Gandhi. The future will depend on what we do in the present. So thank you so much, Jeff, for your presentation, and everybody for being here.
Thank you for having me, Nancy.
Yeah.